It's not often that I've watched a show so delirious and utterly ridiculous that it's made me wonder if there's more to its madness than simple shock value. Which, don't get me wrong, there are times when I'm all for pure entertainment.
We're gonna combine!
We're gonna combine?
They're gonna combine! They're gonna combine!
They're gonna combine.
But more often than not, I like a little substance or hidden meanings to derive from all the nonsense. Luckily, goofiness and seriousness aren't mutually exclusive, and when done well, provide ample contrast. Weighty themes can be carefully hidden within layers of entirely insane situations, providing details to seek out for the curious and the same awesome action for those who are simply along for the ride. At the turn of the 21st century, one show managed to blend these ideas together. Arriving on its Vespa, eager to unleash its absurdities into the world, FLCL successfully navigated its way through layers of theming and character-building interactions without surrendering its frenetic stylings. It's the mark of a great series when it can effectively cram detail after detail into every frame without those facets becoming a detriment to the overall spectacle. And more than just about any other anime I've ever watched, FLCL contains enough detail to match its insane pacing and animation. In a tour de force of 6 episodes, it effectively provides a unique spin on the coming-of-age story that was not only acutely self-aware, but pushed the envelope for what the medium could portray. In fact, it takes themes of growing up and love and completely deconstructs what we'd previously seen, dismantling people's perceptions. So let's take a moment to explore the inner workings of a show that seemingly has no story, yet actually leaves so much room open for the interpretation of its viewers. I am one such viewer, and here's what I've gleaned from its lunacy. At its core, FLCL is a story about growing up, albeit a hyper-compressed, high-strung one. Our main character is Naota, a despondent, angry, jaded boy in the fledgling stages of adolescence. He frequently makes mention of his circumstances as being completely boring and ordinary, and when you look at the town he lives in and the relative lack of a strong adult in his life, it's easy to understand why a child would already be so weary of the world. Altogether though, this brief description paints him in a somewhat boring light, funnily enough, as this places him in the same realm as many a protagonist, anime or otherwise. Still, at the outset of the series, there's some level of forgiveness for his attitude. His older brother, Tasuku, is a personal hero for him, but he's away in America pursuing his dream and becoming more worldly, leaving behind a strange ex-girlfriend that only accentuates the sexual tension threatening to boil over within him. Add to that the lack of a mother figure in his life, which furthers his frustration with any and all female characters present. It's not to say that he's got it tough, but there are reasons for his attitude. As much as the action has consistently been lauded over the years, and rightfully so, I find that the character interactions are just as crucial to adequately maneuvering through FLCL. In particular, it's how Naota communicates with and subsequently reacts to the rest of the cast that drives all the theming forward. Sometimes the characters don't even have to be present to make an impact, much like the aforesaid older brother. Tasuku is the role model for our angsty protag and the near godlike figure for our resident pyromaniac, Mamimi. For not being physically present for the duration of the series, he's pretty important. And again, it even comes down to finer points one would normally brush aside. Even from the start, the show swings for the fences in multiple ways, with Mamimi mentioning, "He who conquers the left side conquers the world," all while holding a baseball bat left-handed. This might seem like a strange comment to make, but it's worth reading into. Tasuku, halfway around the world pursuing dreams of baseball, conquering his own world as it were, has always been the capable older brother, the person people can depend on, and wouldn't you know it, he's left-handed. Not hard to see why an overly attached ex-girlfriend would subconsciously mimic him. This contrasts nicely with our right-handed younger brother, who has always been in Tasuku's shadow. Within the opening minute, we're provided a shot of a plane flying high overhead, further illustrating the distance between them both physically and metaphorically. And the symbolism doesn't stop there, with the bunk beds the brothers shared emblematic of their strong bond. Naota views it as a sacred space, and as such is protective of it, not wishing to tarnish any last remnants of home. In which case his newly acquired mother figure clearly hasn't seen the personal space show because she quickly tramples all over it, but more on her in a bit. Perhaps the most potent expression of Naota's brother arrives in the form of Kanti. After being clobbered Peppered in the head by our pink-haired space oddity, a peculiar horn forms on Naota, a protrusion from which Conti is born. Of course, this alone isn't strange enough for Fooly Cooly, and so an ultra-powerful space pirate king named Atomisk is also laying dormant within the robot. Yeah, the claims that this show is strange aren't off base. Anyway, by coming in contact with all the memories inhabiting Naota's head, Conti discovers a treasured connection between brothers, and as a result, he does what he can to fill that void. In an interesting addition, Conti must eat Naota in later bouts to draw out Atomisk's incredible power. So, the relation is further strengthened here. Naota becomes more powerful and self-assured when he is with his brother, and by joining forces, it helps to facilitate growth in our young hero. To put this into perspective, Naota rejects and then comes to terms with everything around him at breakneck speed, starting with the ex-girlfriend that only reminds him of his brother in troubling ways. He's beginning to crest a difficult age in a person's life, a time where he's finding women increasingly interesting and attractive, but he wouldn't dare slight his brother by trying to satiate those curiosities. On the flip side though, he's repeatedly frustrated by his affections being spurned in one way or another. He can't help but feel some disappointment that he's always there for Mamimi after his brother goes away, yet Tasuku is still the only one she truly thinks of. At the same time, much like their hallowed ground, he becomes incredibly protective and at times reliant on Conti, because not only did he birth this robot, establishing a strange mother-like role in parallel, but it's another symbol of the role model he's been desperately seeking out. Not only that, but it's particularly clever and self-aware of Fooly Cooly to have its one prominent robot character be the one who isn't held down by the weight of adulthood or insecurities. Naota even brashly looks to use Atomisk's power to try and impress the women in his life, only for it to backfire spectacularly. In the end, he relinquishes his grasp on that power and a fleeting connection to his brother, and in the process he moves on from the idealized version of an adult he's been holding on to. In doing so, he accepts that in actually growing up, it's going to take some time, and he's going to have to make some mistakes. Over the course of the show, he then grows up by becoming progressively less reliant and less attached to others, including anything that reminds him of his brother. Even if he's still a child, he has to become his own man and swing the bat a few times, even if he continues to strike out. This is just one way in which the motif of growing up is effectively explored throughout Fooly Cooly, and I find it particularly fascinating because I've always been the older sibling, but it makes me curious if I've ever been Tasuku to my two younger brothers.
Now to finally talk about love and that aforementioned pink-haired base-wielding space patrol woman, aka Haruko Haruhara, the driving force for the entire show.
And by driving force, I mean ramming headfirst into an innocent child and impregnating his head with a Sony TV-headed robot in which an all-powerful space pirate god can manifest through. Yet, despite this terrible first interaction, Naota still falls in love with Haruko, although his affection isn't returned. In fact, it's just about trodden upon by Haruko throughout the duration of the show. It's very clear that Naota is enamored with her on multiple levels, yet initially when he attempts to convey this, he's completely rejected, with her flat out calling it embarrassing for him to even consider professing such thoughts. Her entire personality confirms this as well, as she's merely using anyone and everything to her advantage in a bid to finally take control of Atomisk's immense power. And much like Naota, Atomisk is symbolic of the romanticized adult version she sees herself as becoming. This is basically her idea of love. She's totally in love with Atomisk, but she also wants to become him, not caring if anyone gets trampled along the way. Several characters remark that she must be at least 20, yet she also seems permanently stuck at 19, unable to truly let go of her machinations, and her naivety and callousness comes to a head in the finale. I say this because Haruko is genuinely flustered upon hearing Naota's confession, but at first you can't help but wonder why'd we get that kind of reaction from her. It isn't as if Naota's feelings are unwarranted. Haruko has done nothing but appeal to him in one way or another. Of course, a young, impressionable impressionable boy entering puberty would be completely into her. But this only further proves that Haruko has a fundamentally flawed view of love. In which case, let's take it a step further. She doesn't just seem stuck at 19, she is, for all intents and purposes, forever a 19-year-old. As a result, she'll keep chasing after Adamisk, after that idealized adult that's consumed her headspace, wishing only for some way to hide behind her insecurities rather than face them head-on. Her Jingli bracelet is only a symbol to further showcase her anxieties and naivety, in which case it's not so much that she's shocked by Naota's admission, but more so that she doesn't enjoy being confronted by a genuine moment of love, seeing as she's done nothing but actively reject it up to that point. And then Naota goes and steals away the power she's been desperately seeking over and over again, and it drives her into a childish fit of rage. Adamisk is merely a facade to hide behind, a construct whose roots run deep, and she's simply unwilling to accept that she'll never have complete control of her life. With this power at his disposal, Naota could have taken that opportunity to finally teach her a lesson, to finally get back at her for all the trouble she's caused him. But he learns that hiding behind someone else and borrowing from their strength would only render his actions hollow. He accepts that he'll become precisely who he's meant to be if he doesn't fight it so rigorously, and that he needs to honor himself more and focus on others less. In the same moment, he proves to her that she's what's most important to him by tossing away the very power she coveted, and finally kissing her on his own terms. No goofy circumstances, no sexually charged provocations on Haruko's part. He finally swings the bat, and even if he doesn't end up hitting a home run with her, he knocks it out of the park. And you know, there's quite the age gap between the two, so it's probably for the best. Of course, Haruko still hasn't grown up, and isn't content with sitting around while Adamisk flies to another corner of space. She'll keep chasing after him until she either succeeds or learns the same lessons. And even then, she can't truly succeed, as no one will ever attain that perfect adult form occupying a stall in their mind. Meanwhile, Naota literally becomes this ideal form momentarily and rejects it outright, realizing that it isn't all it's cracked up to be. Growing up and love are intertwined, focal parts of everyone's existence, and things will never be easy. You'll have your heart broken a few times and there will be struggles along the way, but you do what you can with what you have control over, and you have to try and not stress about the rest. Because even when we're all adults, even when we continue to have more and more responsibilities, we're really just big kids at heart, and we're all just winging it. In the last moments, Haruko leaves her old bass guitar with Naota, so maybe his kiss took a little nick out of her tough alien exterior. Maybe we'll even delve into that with FLCL returning all these years later for more madness. Naota might have grown up as much as a 12-year-old can, but Haruko still has some catching up to do.
In watching back through FLCL again for this video, I was amazed not just how much I picked up on that I hadn't before, but how much Naota actively rejects outside influences throughout its runtime.
And I don't say reject under the pretense that his character should have been going with the flow all the time. On the contrary, I think it makes sense given his background that he's so blunt so often despite his tender age. Although by the end of the show, there's a clear change in this perspective, as he learns that there's times where it's okay to let go. Regardless, Naota is the focal point for a show that embodies some of the ideals of punk rock. Now, I already know that by making that statement, I'm stepping out onto a log crossing that is already treacherously close to falling out beneath me. Music is a topic that, at least in my experience, turns people into a spicy mess very quickly, myself included. And the subject of punk music and what even makes the genre what it is sits high up on the list of music that, ironic as this will surely sound, must be treated with some amount of delicacy. In which case, I'll turn to the wise words of Henry Rollins, the influential fourth and final singer of the seminal hardcore punk band Black Flag. When asked the simple question, "What is punk?" Rollins replied, "Everything from the Velvet Underground to Wall Street and anything in between. The kid who throws his spaghetti from the high chair into his father's face, he's pushing back. He's sticking it to the man as he sees it. I like that. So that is punk. The questioning of authority, pushing back against established structures of authority, of government, of the way it is. Questioning anything and everything to me is punk rock. While he does go on to say that the definition is subjective, as anyone else will surely give you their own take on it, I like his point that it's all about pushing against the status quo, because that's precisely what Fooly Cooly does in its 2.5-hour runtime. One of its foundations was entirely centered around breaking the rules and redefining what anime could be going into the new millennium, and watching it proves this enough with how absolutely bonkers it is, let alone the theming. Fooly Cooly's existence and purpose is only further emphasized by the soundtrack, which in itself was at odds with many of its contemporaries. It features the music of The Pillows, a modern alt-rock band whose stylings only add to the show's density. Effect-layered, distorted guitars, pulsating bass, and pounding drums appropriately cut through scene after scene, and the brash exuberance of the music only enhances the youthful angst and vigor of Naota and every situation he faces. The show might be called Fooly Cooly, but it was doing anything but fooling around. Everyone involved with the production of the show set out to question the state of the medium going into a new age, and subsequently challenge any preconceived notions of what it should be by creating something deliberate, expressive, and explosive. And that is punk rock.
Fooly Cooly is a show that you'll be repeatedly told has no purpose other than to be wacky and strange, and I can't help but feel like part of that misses the point.
Sure, it was intentionally crafted to be a non-stop trip into Cuckooville, but there was a concerted effort to make that journey one that would alter the perceptions of its viewers, removing itself from the tried and true of the medium while packing in layer after layer of detail for those with a keen eye for uncovering those finer points. It's ultimately a story about growing up, yet never abandoning your childhood and the capacity to be open. Meanwhile, it's also a story about love and how you have to step up to the plate and accept you're gonna strike out a few times. Nothing in life is certain, and sometimes you just gotta accept that there are things out of your control, both in love and life in general. Yet in spite of all that, through all the lessons Naota learns, it challenges the concept of adulthood in the first place, breaking conventions on multiple levels. Fooly Cooly is always going to be known for how impressive its animation was around its release and how odd it was compared to its contemporaries. But it will continue to be watched, discussed, and praised because of how it strived to do more than anything else before it. And if you haven't seen it yet, make no mistake, the acclaim is deserved.